Welcome to our channel. I'm Mimi.
And I'm Kiki. We've got a lot of great recipes for you, so let's get cooking.
So this recipe calls for 3 mashed bananas and 1 cup of buttermilk. If you don't have buttermilk on hand, it's really easy to make. You just need 1 cup of milk and 1 tablespoon of either vinegar or lemon juice. You'll stir it together and set it aside to curdle for a little bit. In a large bowl, you're going to add together 2 cups of flour, 1/2 cup of melted butter, 1 cup of sugar, 2 eggs, the 1/2 cup of buttermilk we just made, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1 full teaspoon of baking powder. And you'll mix this all together. For the apples, you're going to want to peel, slice, and dice 2 apples. They can be any apples that you choose. These are the ones that I had on hand. So I peeled them and then I sliced them by using my apple corer, which makes it a lot easier to then dice them. So to my stove and my large skillet, I am just melting 2 tablespoons of butter. And once it's melted down, we're going to add in the diced apples. We're going to kind of stir them around a little bit. The seasonings we're going to add are 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, or if you'd like, you could use 2 tablespoons of maple sugar. Also, 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla, 1/2 teaspoon of ginger, 1/2 teaspoon of cloves, 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg. Then we're just going to stir these occasionally until they are softened before we add them together into our batter. Now all of these spices are really, if you have it around or if you want to add it, it's not necessary. I didn't add ginger to mine and it still turned out great. The recipe I used for the crumble on top is just a really quick recipe. It's 1/2 cup firmly packed brown sugar, 1 1/4 cup of white flour, 1/3 cup of sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, and I stirred it to combine. Once it's completely combined, you're going to use 6 tablespoons of melted butter and use a fork in kind of like a clawing motion to get it broken up and look sandy rather than more dough-like. You want it to be crumbly. Now we're going to put everything together. So the first thing you'll do is add in your bananas and your apples and then stir them so that everything is evenly mixed. Since there was a lot of batter, I decided to use both a regular loaf pan and a mini loaf pan. So I sprayed them with the nonstick spray before adding the batter. Be sure to remember that when you're adding the batter to the loaf pan, you're only filling it about 3/4 of the way full. You don't want to overfill it. Once the batter was in the loaf pans, I scooped the crumble on top of each one, making sure that they were evenly covered. Then I put it in the oven and baked it at 350 degrees for 50 minutes. And because I had a lot of excess crumble, I was able to put it in a Ziploc bag and store it in my freezer for the next time I make this treat. Once I pulled the loaf pans out of the oven, I quickly realized that the large loaf pan needed a little bit more time. The mini loaf pan cooked just fine in the 50 minutes that I had it in the oven, so I was able to cut and serve that one. The larger loaf pan needed an additional 10 minutes before it completely set up. With this bread baking in my house truly smelled like Christmas. It smelled amazing. And the bread itself turned out incredibly moist and very delicious. The crumble on top was just the perfect touch. It looks like a very dense loaf of bread, but it's actually not as dense as it looks. The flavors of the apples and the bananas together was really just wonderful. I think the next time I make this, instead of doing the large loaf pan, I'm going to do 3 of the mini loaf pans because it turned out so well.